I'm Andrew Serbinsky of MachineartMoto, and I'm going to demonstrate for you how to install the MachineartMoto MudSling on the R1200GS. The MudSling fits all GS models between 2005 and the current year, which is 2011, and in Europe from 2004 to the current year. So let's see what's in the kit before we begin the installation. And these are the parts that you will receive in your kit. The MudSling itself, which is one piece, and you can see that these two winglets have holes in it for mounting with the screws that are included, and the winglets on the side fit underneath the frame rails and triangulate into position via the zip ties. The existing screws are removed because they're too short, so we supply 2 additional screws and 2 rubber washers in addition to these 4 zip ties. That'll be the last step in the installation. 2 other items are 2 rubber shims that are rarely used, but we supply them just to provide adjustment for clearance between the MudSling and the shock, depending on your bike and whether it has ESA or whether the stock shock is installed. The tools you'll need will be a T25 Torx driver and a clipping plier like this one. For removal of the guards over the existing shock on machines with ESA, you'll need an 8mm socket, and for machines that have the stock shock installed, you can remove that same screw to remove the existing guard with this T25 Torx driver. First thing to do before you start is to make sure the bike is on its center stand safely on level ground, and there's no need to remove the rear wheel. Before installing the MudSling, we're going to remove the stock shock cover. In this case, on an ESA equipped bike, same thing holds true for those bikes with standard shocks. And the reason we're going to do that is to make sure that there's as much clearance available between the MudSling and the shock spring because of suspension movement. As the suspension compresses, the shock bottom tends to move a little closer to the MudSling, so we want as much room there as possible. And to remove the standard shock cover on the ESA unit is simple. There are 3 bolts, 1 on the side and 2 in the back. All you need is an 8mm socket. There is on the standard non-ESA shock 1 screw at the top that is loosened with a T25 Torx head driver. And once you remove that, just spread the plastic a little bit and then slip it off the shock. In this case, we need an 8mm. There is 1 bolt that holds the spring guard in place at the top of the unit. And it comes off just like that. The next thing we need to do is remove 2 existing screws that hold on the fender liner. These screws are located in this little depression on the left and right sides. These screws are a little short after the MudSling is installed, so we have provided 2 longer screws that will take its place. The second screw is removed. Now, pick up the MudSling and carefully thread it in between the tire and the shock, positioning these wings on the outside underneath the frame rails and nesting the holes to align with the holes of the screws that you've just removed. I'm going to hold it in place with one hand as I take a screw with a rubber washer on it already. I'm not going to tighten this completely, just enough so that it is reasonably secure so that we can make a few adjustments before tightening them to complete the job. You notice that this moves a little bit now. We will cinch that down with zip ties a bit later on. Let's move to the other side. We've moved to the left side of the bike now, and here I want to show you the importance of adjusting the position of the MudSling fore and aft to maintain as much clearance as possible between the surface and the spring. It's especially true for bikes with the ESA unit. You notice at the bottom here there is a plated screw that sticks out quite a lot, and we want to maximize the distance between that and the surface of the MudSling. It's less important with the standard suspension because there's a lot more room there. Now, because we installed the screws loosely, we can move this back and forth to 3 millimeters or so. And there are no zip ties installed here, so I'm just going to grip this on the left side. And with my right hand, I'm gripping the other side of the MudSling, and I'm going to move it back and forth to show you how much movement is possible. So, in order to maximize the clearance, I'm going to pull back, as you can see, and that's where I want to tighten the screw. So, in that position then, I am going to tighten that screw. And we've managed to maintain about 10 millimeters clearance between the surface of the MudSling and that screw. That's a safe margin. Now, after having done that adjustment, if you still find that you don't have sufficient clearance between the screw on the bottom of the ESA and the MudSling, then we have a solution for you. And the reason that that happens in some bikes, in this case there's plenty of clearance, on others there is not. And we found that there are assembly tolerance differences. The MudSling is resting up against the underside of the fender liner, which is a separate part. That's resting up against the frame, and the screws that we put in enter a speed nut that is on the frame, and that speed nut has a little bit of movement to it, so there's a potential for plus or minus 3 to 4 millimeters of tolerance difference. So if after having made the last adjustment you still need more clearance, then we provided 2 square rubber shims with an adhesive backing that you peel off to insert in the forward part of the wing here that nest underneath the side frame rail. And you position that out of sight, but toward the forward-facing portion of it. And what that does is pivot the MudSling a little bit backwards to increase the clearance between it and that screw. Then once this is in place, then we install the zip ties. Now at this point you will have tightened the 2 screws that enter the frame after having adjusted the clearance. And the last step is to install the zip ties to triangulate the MudSling to the frame. And there are 2 holes here. We have 2 zip ties. So take one, insert it into the top hole, bring it around, pull it nice and tight. Take the second one and do the same thing. And then take a wire clip, trim off the excess, and then take the juncture and turn it around so it's not visible from the outside. And repeat on the other side, and then you're finished. The MudSling is installed, and you'll have much better protection from mud, rocks, tar, and anything else you may throw forward by your rear tire. Good luck.